Welcome to another edition of CSBJ Radio. I am your host, Greg Wilson, the founding editor and owner of Connection Small Business Journal. You can find us online at www.connectmybusiness.me. Again, connectmybusiness.me. You follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at ConnectMyBiz. Again, at ConnectMyBiz, BIZZ. Today we have a very special guest on today's podcast, Miss LaTanya O'Kelly. How are you doing today, LaTanya?
I'm doing great, Greg. Thank you so much for having me.
So, you and I connected via social media, which we'll probably talk about that a little bit today, and how social media actually works and how you're able to connect with people literally from all over the world and to grow your own individual business. But if you can, LaTanya, just tell us a little bit about you and your business.
Okay. Well, like you said, my name is LaTanya. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Steeler Nation. Yes,
Steeler Nation, okay.
That's right. So you already know. But
exactly.
I currently reside in Atlanta, Georgia, and that's where I'm based out of. I started as a certified legal assistant. Imagine that. Did that for a few years, was really good at it, but if anybody out there listening is an attorney, my bad, but they're special people. So I learned that my personality was a bit much for the box. But I enjoyed the assisting part of it. I love the research. I love the writing and all that stuff. The stress of, having to do all the other stuff was just a bit much for me. So I started my own virtual assisting firm. And like you mentioned, with social media wasn't really big at that time, but still the internet, viral stuff like that, I was able to do a lot of freelance work with a lot of different people during that time. Unfortunately, no one knew who they were. So me being the person I am, I would still reach out to media, radio, publications and different things like that. And I remember one guy, when I called, he was like, "Oh, so you're her publicist?" And I was like, "Yeah." I wasn't going to say no. I got the article. I got the end game. And so once I got off the phone with him, I started really researching what it was, what they did, and just really made it my own. And realized that was part of the job that I was already doing in the administrative part of working with my clients virtually. Because, I didn't do the cold call thing, but it was like if somebody wanted, because it wasn't just certain services or industries, anybody that needed work, admin work, I was able to work with. So that's kind of how I kind of evolved into the publicist, and I have not looked back, and I love it.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing, and I love the story, behind literally every small business owner, every entrepreneur has a story, and so many times we do reach that. I'm going to label it a breaking point where we've had enough of the 8 to 5 and 9 to 5.
Yes.
We want to birth what seeds have already been planted in us, and that's just an amazing story to hear. And so for those of us that are listening, that is the start of the O'Kelly factor, and it's absolutely amazing just how you and I connected, even over the internet. And one of the things that you do, you're known for providing a personalized, unique, out of the box experience or out of the box campaign. So give us just an idea of how the O'Kelly factor is able to do just that. Provided out of the box.
Well, it is so cool. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'm so excited. It is so cool because when people think of publicists, the first thing you got to get is like they'll say publisher or publicist. So that's the first part. I know whether I'm going to have a short conversation or a really long conversation. And if they say publisher, because I'm like, okay, you're not even in the same lane, but that's all right. But when I say a unique out-of-the-box campaign, because what people don't understand, and I'm going to repeat this for your listeners, is that if you have a product, talent, or service, you need exposure or you will die.
Right.
Okay, one more time. No matter whether you have a product, talent, or service, if you do not have exposure, you will die. So I base that concept on whatever the service is. I have nonprofits. I have a liquor company that's a brand that I represent and I'm building. So it doesn't matter what it is. Because another thing, I say this on my social media every day, you are your brand.
Right.
So if people don't understand that when they go out the door every day, you're a brand. You don't think you are, but you are, depending on how you're dressed, how you speak, how you carry yourself. And so what I do is in my initial conversation with clients is I just learn a lot about them. I'll learn about not just what their product, seller, or service is, but who they are as individuals. Because when building a brand, you're three-dimensional. You're not just that product, seller, or service. You're a man, a female. When you meet somebody, you're meeting them for everybody they know. And we want to tap into everybody and everything. So part of my unique thing is I'm really big on networking. Like, if you don't get out and meet people, especially independents, especially small business owners, we cannot compete with the really high up people yet. But if we're in the same room, like, okay, perfect example. I went to this amazing conference yesterday. It was BOSS. It was an acronym, and I can't remember what it was for, but it was some amazing women, VIPs from here, there, and everywhere. But everybody was, and there was people that started small businesses or hadn't even started a business yet. But the cool thing was that these women were sharing their information of how they got there. And when you said birth, that gave me chills, because that was basically what everybody was saying about how, women give birth, or you give birth to your dream. And so those are the type of things and I took a client. So those are the different things. Like, I find out what your hobbies are, what you like to do, because say Greg was a client and I say, okay, Greg, do you like to cook? And he was like, yeah, I like to cook. Okay, so one way that I would get you involved is I would get you on a cooking show, because here's the end game. When you're cooking, they're going to say, well, tell me about yourself, Greg. What are you going to do? You're going to talk about your brand. Exactly. So I find unique ways to get you in places that no one else like you is going to be in, because I don't want you competing against yourself. I want you to have the opportunity to meet new people and them to meet you. Another way is all of my clients have to have a charitable side, because, again, you're building a brand.
There you go.
And if something happens for some reason Greg goes off on somebody on the show, well, my job as a publicist would remind them that Greg loves the kids. He really does. So I could become a spin doctor. I don't like it much, but in the off chance, because life happens, stuff happens, that you just have everything kind of lined up. The foundation is solid. So then I have no room to just kind of move some things around and remind people of who the brand really is and how they are. So that's kind of, again, it's just about getting to know the person to find out exactly. So that's why I say unique, because a traditional publicist, you have the press releases. Everybody thinks, oh, my God, it's the red carpet. Yeah, there are some of those, but there's a lot of work before you get there, a lot.
And that is so important, and I like what you were talking about how many of us truly realize that we, even as individuals, we are our brand. One of the things that I steer people away from is, when we get those negative social media posts.
Right.
I have a few customers, a few clients, and they've received negative publicity via their social media. And immediately the first reaction is to, hey, delete that, block that person, and
or lash out,
or lash back out. So, what advice would you give to those that are in my listening audience? How to handle negative publicity on social media?
Well, what I have this thing that I tell my clients: if you starve it, it'll die. If you feed it, it'll grow.
Right.
So, first thing for my clients, a lot of my clients, I handle the social media so that we don't have those issues, because I'm going to be objective. My job is to protect the brand, period. And sometimes I tell them too, I protect it from them, from the instances just like you mentioned. When I've represented independent artists, they are the ones that really get upset if they post a song and everybody don't like it. So with me handling it, I'm not going to say anything that's out of pocket. But like you said, if a comment comes and they want to go in and I can't believe that, okay, but first of all, that's their opinion. They're allowed to do so. But if you give energy to that, it's going to grow. Right. If you let it go, the very next person is going to come and say, great comment. You're giving credibility to it if you respond. If you don't, if there's something, what I would normally do too is I just make a positive something over top of it, because with social media, it'll just go down the timeline. It'll go away.
Right.
So if you keep talking about it, then it comes back up. If you comment, then another person got to comment. And it's really for naught, because, again, you wasted all that energy and time on something that's really not relevant, because it could be somebody that is really in competition with you. It could be a ghost. You know what I mean? It's just so many ifs that it's really not worth the time to feed it. That's why I always say, if you feed it, it'll grow. If you starve it, I promise you it will die. Think about a plant.
Exactly. So don't add the social media.
Not at all. And, I mean, if you think about it too, and it's so crazy to me because I always see it when you see a lot of these A-listers, and all I keep thinking is like, where are their handlers? When they talk crazy, I'm like, wow, they handling their own social media.
Exactly.
And it's like they'll have a new project out or a new movie, and nobody's even talking about that because of the foolishness that they're talking about either in their personal lives or, you know, all this other stuff that they got going on somewhere else. It's insanity to me. It's really, really crazy. Like, okay, perfect example, not to get even political, but with this whole Candid and him, right, the Twitter.
Right, come on.
Dude is crazy. It's coming up, it's biting him right where it hurts.
Right. And
because he can't stay off the keyboard.
Exactly. And for those of us that are small business owners that either A, don't have a publicist to run our social media campaign, you haven't hired or outsourced, you know, your social media, the part of that social media part of your business, you know, you get feelings involved and
it's huge.
Exactly.
I mean, just like you said, the majority, I can just be honest, the majority of my business comes from social media.
Right.
Like you said, because I'm in Atlanta, I have clients in Miami, New York, Arizona, Las Vegas, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Texas, Tennessee, you know, all because of social media. And some of them I've met in person and some of I don't need to because of the fact they trust me enough to handle their brand. But understand, like you said, you don't have to have a publicist or whatever, but you have to be mindful how powerful social media is. If you don't have it, I suggest you get it.
Right.
If you don't, then you're doing yourself and your business and your brand such a disservice.
You are. Those are powerful words, LaTanya. And one of the things that I want to talk about now, you know, something that you mentioned earlier, you know, just how important exposure is for a business, you know, and I remember, let's just go down memory lane just for a second. I remember the very first business that I opened up, I failed within a year and a half, 2 years, because I ran out of capital. I can look at it and say, okay, well, but how many people were walking through, and I actually had a brick and mortar business.
Okay.
You know, but the lack of individuals that knew about Greg Wilson, knew about the business, and I truly believe that my lack of exposure led to, you know, me eating through my the capital that I had at the time, and the lack of customers coming through the door. So yes, you need exposure. What way?
And I'm sorry to cut you off. I can tell you, at first, I commend you for even just being transparent enough to acknowledge that is the fact the case. And the different things, it can be really small and inexpensive. That's what's so cool about social media.
Yes, it is.
is really, and don't get hung up on the likes, because I can promise you, the majority of my clients don't click a like. They don't comment, but they're watching.
Right. Absolutely.
They're watching. The ones that have the money, the ones that want to support you, but they want to see what you do in certain situations. They want to see if you've ever been on my Facebook page, I'm positive every morning because first of all, I'm a publicist. I'm not going to be messy. That's just not going to happen. Because if I feel a certain type of way, then I step back. I know enough that, like I said, if I say one wrong thing, that ruins everything because I'm protecting my brand and all the brands I represent. Exactly. So for those that may not can afford a publicist or, you know, just don't have that, what you can still do, social media is huge. That's the first thing. And it's free. So there you go. Another way is to get exposure. You have to get out. You have to go meet people. Something that I do, and it's so funny because, like, when I first meet a client, like the initial conversation or whatever, and I remember when I have a model, her name is Singleton. She's in New York right now, but when I first met her, she was 16. So we were at Atlantic Station, and I said, well, let me show you what I mean. So I took this beautiful young girl. We took our cell phone cameras, and I took her outside. And I simply introduced her to people walking by. I said, hi, this is my model, Singleton. She would love to take a picture with you. And, okay, the shock on her face was like, oh, my God. But she did it because, again, you're a model. You want people want to be next to somebody that's on the come up. Please remember that. Right. So say, for instance, you have an author. If you have a book, then you need to take your book, go to a networking event. You don't have to stay. But the cool thing about social media is you check in the Facebook or Instagram or whatever that you're at the location. You get a couple of pictures with some key people in the room, and you leave. And you take those pictures and you make sure that those folks know where you are on social media, and you tag them. Like I said, when you meet somebody, you're meeting everybody they know. So now, by the time you get back, your numbers are going to grow because this person's going to want to show everybody that they met this author. Now, they don't know who you are or whatever, but everybody wants somebody that's going to come up.
Exactly. I love it. LaTanya,
hey, when it was free.
Exactly. You know, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you.
You know, and this is simply, LaTanya, the very first podcast that you and I are going to do.
I would love to come back anytime.
I promise you, this connection that you and I made utilizing social media, and you and I both love social media, I promise you that we're definitely going to come back together and record another podcast. But I thank you so much
for having me.
How do people find you? I know how I found you, but
you know how you find me. You can find me at The O'Kelly Factor. That's THE O'Kelly OKELLY Factor FACTOR. And I'm sure you're going to have my information on your website or something. But definitely, please just remember that exposure. And they say some things about all press is not good. What is it? Even bad press, but you don't want to go after that. Don't do that. Exactly. Just really be mindful that you are your brand.
You are your brand. And one thing that we didn't cover today, and I know we're trying to close, but let's all be consistent. You know, be consistent.
Absolutely.
Across your brand.
Exactly. Especially with that, plus, especially with social media, because there's always somebody new coming. So if you're going to do, and another big thing too is videos. Now that everybody does Facebook Live and all that good stuff, those are really good tools to use but if you're going to start that, be consistent in that. If you're going to start a video blog about, if you're a tax preparer and you know tax season is coming and you want to give tips, and say on Sundays you're going to do that, then you have to do that every Sunday because there's going to be somebody that's looking for you. And if you're not where you're supposed to be, you're going to lose everybody. So be consistent. That's a great one.
Again, LaTanya, I greatly appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you so much.
For those of you that are in the listening audience, be sure you check out The O'Kelly Factor. Again, DOKELLY Factor on Facebook, on Instagram, Twitter.
Yeah, all that good stuff.
Connect with this young lady here. She's in Atlanta, but again, is able to do business anywhere within the continental United States. LaTanya, again, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. You guys are blessed. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.